I don't chase trends. If I see something I like, I will use it, but I don't believe that creating a trendy piece of content is gonna get you clients or customers, and I also don't believe that going viral is gonna get you customers. It might get you followers, but it's not necessarily gonna grow your bottom line. Just because you go viral, that means nothing.
Shut her up and
Hey, Shutter Squad, welcome back to The One Behind the Lens. Today, my guest is Lindsay Pinchuk, an award winning entrepreneur, consultant, and small business mentor. Lindsay built her first company, Bump Club and Beyond, from just $500 into a seven-figure brand, with partnerships including Target, Nordstrom's, and Huggies, reaching over 3 million people every month before selling the business. Today, Lindsay is the founder of Dear FoundHer, a top podcast and community supporting women business owners over 40. Through her podcast, newsletter, mentorship, and her signature sweep framework, she helps entrepreneurs simplify their marketing and build long term success. In this episode, Lindsay breaks down sweep, social media, website, emails, events, partnerships, publicity, and how taking one piece of content and sweeping it across all of those channels can completely change the way you think about marketing. We talk about why partnerships don't have to mean brand deals or paid collaborations, how to show up on camera, even if that terrifies you, why chasing trends isn't the growth strategy people think it is, and why women over 40 might just have the biggest advantage in business right now. Lindsay also shares what inspired her to start writing on Substack with the Found Her files. And she's got a generous listener gift she's sharing near the end. This conversation is packed with practical, no fluff marketing advice you can actually use. Let's get into it. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I think this is going to be a really good conversation. I already feel it.
Thank you, Kate, for having me. I'm excited to be here. I can't wait for this conversation, and I can feel it too. So get excited to your listeners.
Yeah, yeah. So, for the listeners who may not have been introduced to you yet, can you just tell everybody who you are and, a little bit about what you do?
Yes, of course. So my name is Lindsay Pinchuk. I am a female founder. I was working in corporate America and I started a community for expectant and new parents really out of necessity of my own. I didn't have any friends who were pregnant at the same time as me. We all have rising 10th graders. I was just first. And so I started a community and a resource for expectant parents and parents that I grew to generate 7 figures of revenue for 6 years straight. We were working with brands like Target and Nordstrom and all the stroller and car seat companies and The Honest Company and Unilever and all of the above. And after a decade, I sold that company to a large agency conglomerate called Advantage Marketing Solutions. I worked there for 2 years, and after it was pretty soon in that I knew that I didn't really wanna be there anymore, and there was, a lot of strife and stress that went along with the sale of my company, and I really just wanted to help other female founders, and so I ended up it took me about 8 months to negotiate my exit, and I negotiated my exit, and I left, and when I left, I did with one mission, and that was to help other women business owners to build and grow their businesses using simple marketing practices, the same way that I did. I bootstrapped the whole thing, I didn't have investors, and I did it on my own terms. And so when I left, I started fairly soon after, I started a podcast called Dear FoundHer, and I share on that podcast the stories of female founders of our time. And from that podcast, there were many women small business owners who were like, "I wanna be mentored by you. How can I work with you?" And so I started a mentorship, and then they wanted to meet each other, so we started an online community, and then I started a newsletter. And so now it is a whole ecosystem for female founders who are over 40 and who are building their own businesses. It's called Dear FoundHer. And that is really kind of how I got to where I am, but the crux of it all was really and truly that I bootstrapped the whole thing, and I grew it through very simple, basic marketing practices. And oftentimes people ask me, like, "Who's on your social media team? Who's on your marketing team?" And I'm like, "You're looking at her. I just have a really good framework and process." And so when I really sat down and I figured out what I did, I was able to coin this framework that I now called SWEEP. SWEEP stands for social media, website, emails, events, partnerships, and publicity. And ultimately, what it means is you take one message and you sweep it across as many of these tactics or strategies as you can to amplify it. And when you do that, you are not necessarily creating content over and over and over and all the time. You're taking the content that you have and you're amplifying it and you're reusing it and repurposing it in a way that's meaningful and connects with your community. And that's what I did at Bump Club. And that is what I am doing now at Dear FoundHer. And so now I teach other women business owners really how to take this very simple, basic marketing strategy and apply it to their small business. And it works.
Mm, mm. I think, you talking about that, which I love because I do think that's key. Like, I think that's marketing and all of that is such a big conversation for photographer. I mean, I think for any small business for sure. And I think it is that whole thing of you can reuse, you can just, you don't have to like invent the wheel every single time. And that was even hard for me to try to figure out where even if I will show now stuff, maybe images or video behind the scenes video or something that maybe happened 2 or 3 years ago, but if someone remembers, they're like they don't care that they saw it again, and a lot of people probably maybe didn't even maybe see it or won't remember.
We are served so many things on a minute by minute basis, forget a daily basis, like minute by minute, hour by hour. I always tell my clients, no one remembers what you shared yesterday except for you. And instead of getting on this content creation hamster wheel where you feel like you have to create new content all the time, use what works and focus on your business. And
Mm,
what works is really consistency and sharing the same things over and over and over again so that people can connect with you. And sometimes it takes a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what it is that works and what sticks.
mhm,
But once you have that down pat, it is so important that you just continue to use it and you repurpose it because to your point, no one remembers. No one remembers what they saw an hour ago, forget 3 months ago, 6 months ago. And you can focus on your business because most of us are not content creators for our businesses. We are business owners that need to focus on our revenue stream, and that revenue is not coming from creating content. And
mhm,
the way that our world works now is we've all kind of been forced into this game of content creation, whether we like it or not. And so
mhm,
it's really about being smart about what it is that you're sharing and efficient and using it consistently to amplify what it is that you're trying to communicate, and that is ultimately gonna help your business.
mm. I think, like, the consistent, that's, like, the key word right there is what you're talking about. Because I have where people will talk about, content in, say, Instagram content versus blog, for photographers, like, blogging and probably for any business, but for photographers, blogging is actually a very big thing, and there's a lot of photographers that are like, "I don't have time," which I get it.
Here's the thing, by you creating the blog for your senior session, right then and there, you have created content that you can use in other places. So if you start with the blog, let's say, and then you take that senior's picture and you use it on Instagram or you create a carousel of pictures that you use on Instagram. And then you take some of the copy from the blog and you use it as the caption. And you introduce your community to this senior and what you did in the session that made it so amazing. There, right there, you could probably come up with 3 to 5 different posts for Instagram right then and there from that blog, right? And then you can also put it in an email and you can say, I did a great session last week. Here's some highlights, and here's how we can apply it to your session." So then you have email right there, right? And then in terms of, like, events, you might not necessarily use that at an event, but, you could talk about that session if you are talking to photographers about how to take pictures in a certain way, certain aspect. You can refer back to that session for that you blogged about, and you will know what you did because you shared about it in that blog, right?
Mhm.
And then in terms of, like, publicity, you know, when you as a photographer are sharing about your client, and obviously as long as you have permission, in today's day and age, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna share for you too. Publicity doesn't need to be a newspaper article or a TV segment or something in the traditional sense of PR. Publicity is just getting people to talk about your work. So if your
Mhm.
client's happy, which as a photographer most times they are, and you're sharing it, they're gonna share it too, and they're gonna
Mhm.
talk about it, and right there, you've got some buzz. So, the only letter of my acronym that this might not apply to, is partnerships, but in actuality, though, the partnership is the client, and if the client likes it, then they're gonna, share your work word of mouth anyway. So, right there, that one blog post has really been amplified across all of these different mechanisms, and even with social media, I gave the example of Instagram, but you can share it in a Facebook group, you can share it on LinkedIn, you can share it on TikTok. There are so many different ways that you can share it. Right there, one blog post, you have 30 different ways that you can share this piece of content.
That connection of all of that photographers, I think, have a hard time, and I think it's that
It's
hard.
not just photographers.
Okay,
It's
okay,
small
it's
business
just small
owners.
business, yeah.
We're
I
pressed for
also
time.
We're pressed for time, and I think, and I don't we don't have to talk about AI or anything like that of that, but I've been starting to use, like, Claude to help me just keep me on task because we have so much going on. We're doing so many things that I'm just like, I just need to tell me, "Okay, I blogged, now what do I do?" Like, I know, but I'm like, I just need you to give me that so that I can
But here's a way
get
that
it
you
out.
can take it a step further with Claude. Like, you could say to Claude, "Here's my blog that I did on this session." Act as a social media strategist with, 10 years of experience, or a social media manager who writes copy,
Mm.
and write me a post on Instagram and a post for LinkedIn and a post for Facebook. You can ask it to take your words and do that for you.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I've even, like, looked in the skills of doing that too, of, like, just once I do a blog, do all of these other things, and that's helped me. I've always been pretty good with, say, Instagram and Facebook, but then I'm like, "Oh, there's Pinterest, and there's LinkedIn," and, like, people I don't know if photographers take advantage of LinkedIn as much as I think we should, that I've been trying to be like, "Okay, you need to be consistent on there as well."
LinkedIn is a great place to share, like, long form thoughts about your sessions and, like, why they're great. So, like to take a blog post and repurpose it, because every single person on LinkedIn is a person that could essentially be your customer as a photographer. I mean, these are people with families. They're people with, that maybe work corporately, that maybe they need a headshot. There's so many different things that you could be taking pictures of, right? And so
Right.
it's just putting yourself in another free place where your work is getting recognized. And I think the best thing about a photographer in terms of content is your work is content.
Mhm,
And that
mhm.
doesn't always happen. Like, my work is very much, I am mentoring people and we have conversations on Zoom. And so, like, unless I refer back to it, which I do often in my social posts, but I have to create that content. I'm not creating content through my work that I can then automatically just share. You have pictures that are beautiful, that are showcasing what you do, and you can share them, and that's marketing in and of itself.
Mhm, mhm. Going with all of this, like, you're giving us all the tips. You talked about sweep, your framework. Can you give us, like, a quick, like, overview and why it changed the way you think about marketing? And I mean, we're getting a example of this, but just to kinda give you.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I love to share this story because when I was building my first company, Bump Club, I really was like building the plane as it was flying. I mean, really and truly. It was like flying by the seat of my pants. I just did things when they came up. There was no strategy. I did when I sold the company, I had 10 employees, so I wasn't doing it on my own. I'm in a place now where I don't want employees. Like I have a few VAs that help me, but I don't want a business with employees anymore. But
Mhm.
when I really took that step back, when I left and was like, "What was it that I did?" And I thought about this compliment that people give me all the time, and they still give me today when they say, like, "How many people are on your marketing team?" I sat down and I was like, "I have a tendency of being everywhere even though I'm only one person because I'm smart about how I use my content." And so when I actually wrote out this acronym and I figured out, this is kind of what I'm going to start teaching now, it changed the way that I feel about marketing because I think that a lot of business owners, especially small business owners, think that marketing is number 1, complicated. I think number 2, they think that they have to be spending money on ads and they have to be investing, in all this technology. I think number 3, a lot of small business owners think that they need to have all these funnels and just so many like different things set up and lead magnets and whatever it might be. They're like I'm throwing out all these buzzwords that you all hear all the time.
Mhm.
And when I sat down and really looked at what was effective, like what was truly effective, and the letter of sweep that really has grown both of my businesses is partnerships. And that is really where I have seen explosion in both of my businesses is when I have borrowed someone else's community. And so when I sat down and was like, well, what really grew my business? It was partnerships. But I've used those partnerships across all these other mechanisms, right? Like partnerships have been in social media and on my website and in emails and at events and in publicity. And the answer to your question is it's not complicated.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to cost money. And I
Mhm.
think that that is really the misconception of marketing when it comes to a business owner is they're like, "Oh, well, I don't have enough money." You don't need money. You don't need money to show up and share your story and say, "Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm a photographer, and this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is my specialty and why I do it, and here's how you work with me." You don't
Mhm.
need money for that. You just need to show up and consistently share that story across all of these mechanisms that I just gave you, and you will start getting inquiries and people will take interest in you. But
Mhm.
half the time, people aren't even showing up and sharing their story. That's the simplest thing that you can do. And so I think for me, what it really was debunking this myth that you needed to have a big team, you needed to have a big budget, you needed to have 1,000,000 followers. You don't. You just need a very simple process that you can execute consistently over and over and over again. And that's what Sweep has allowed me to do for my own business and for that of hundreds of clients, thousands of clients now. And I know that it doesn't have to be complicated. And that's the other thing too. A lot of the women that I work with, 'cause I do work with men also, but a lot of mostly women that I work with are over 40 and they're just not necessarily technologically the most savviest and they're willing to admit that. And so it's really about giving these very basic principles and this very simple foundation of executing these strategies and it works, and it's like once you get this foundation down, you can do some of the more complicated things, but even if you are the most technologically savvy person, if you don't have that foundation down, the most technical opportunities are they're not gonna be worth it because you need to have the foundation of your marketing down pat first. Does that
Right.
answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. And I think when you were talking, I was thinking about the word partnership and like how you said it doesn't have to be, say, like a brand, that it's your clients and that's your partnership and utilize those partners, utilize your clients, um, asking for reviews and then repurposing those. Like, I used to do it so great, and then I kind of fell off doing it, and I'm now doing that again of asking for reviews, and yes, it's on Google, so that's great, but then I'm repurposing that in my blog, like, "Hey, this is what Annabelle's mom said." 2 clients this year that they had 4 kids, and I'm on their 4th kid.
Oh my god.
So utilizing that, just to be like, how amazing is this that they're coming back to me and
It's interesting because I think a lot of times, to your point, people think that partnerships mean paid. People
Mhm,
think that partnerships mean brands. And really and truly, it's about finding complementary businesses who want to reach the same community that you do and
mhm,
using each of your assets to get in front of that community. Like,
mhm,
I have a lot of photographers who work with me in my mentorship, and they partner with brick and mortar locations for headshot shoots. That's a partnership.
mhm,
Or, like, I had a few women in my community here in Chicago. One of them is a color specialist, and she, like, works with you on your colors, and then one of them is, like, a functional medicine like, a functional medicine doctor, and then they partnered together, and I think there was a photographer involved in this event that they did, and they did some headshots like, intro to functional medicine, and it was, like, a whole night out for women over 40s,
mm,
like, that's a partnership,
mhm,
that's a partnership, and then to your point, one of the things that I tell all of my clients is that you have to look at the people who consume your content as your community. And the minute you start treating them like community, not talking at them, but talking with them, having conversations with them, answering them, responding to them, engaging with them, that's the whole thing. A community is all about engagement. If they're your audience, they're just going to consume. But if they're your community, they're going to engage with you. And once you have a community that really believes in you and what you do, and they love what you do, and it could be a community of 20 people, it doesn't have to be thousands, right? You have people, to your point, that you can reach out to and say, "I'm hosting this event with so and so partner. Will you share it for me? Or
mm,
would you mind leaving me a review? I'd love to beef up my reviews." Or can you spread the word on X, Y, and Z for me? I'm running a special. I mean, once you have a community who really truly believes in you, they are your best word of mouth marketers. And so it's
mhm,
really important to recognize that community goes both ways
mhm,
and to talk to them as such when you're talking to them through your content.
yeah, and I think and I'm sure, I'm over 42 and I don't know if it is this or if we at the time when I first started, it was like this thing of like you just kind of showed your work. You didn't as say at like if they gave you a review, great. Or just reaching out even to other photographers or I mean I could see I'd be fine reaching out with say like a hair salon or anything like that, like partnership. But even other photographers or videographer, like, you can reach out to people or talk to them on social media and, like you said, and be a community. We don't have to be in, like
Yes.
yeah.
And here's my answer to that is, like, I'm not just referring to your community of customers, I'm referring to your community surrounding your business and, like, your business community. And I always say to people, like, there is enough business to go around for everybody. There is, like, especially if you're a solopreneur and if you're a photographer, which your audience is comprised of photographers, like your listeners. I mean, there's one of you. Maybe you have a couple of people on your team, right? Like, you need to have good people to refer to if someone reaches out to you and you can't do whatever it is that they need. And
Mhm.
I think that that's very important too to recognize, like, someone might reach out to you or a fellow photographer and say, "I'm really looking for this newborn specialist." And maybe that's not your specialty, but you know a kick ass newborn photographer. And so you're going to refer that person and they're going to refer back to you for senior portraits.
Mhm.
And I
Yes.
think that, like, it's knowing what you're good at and building a community that is supportive of you, and, like, there is nothing wrong with that, and I think, like, I have people that I refer to all the time for social media, for graphic design, for branding. I mean, and a lot of these things, not graphic design, but the other things I can do, but I don't need to do it all, and I
Mm.
would rather refer to someone who that's their specialty.
Mhm.
knowing that they'll refer back to me if there's a female founder over 40 who needs help building and growing a business.
Going back to, like, the kinda like you were talking about marketing and, like, oh, the ads and, like, all of that. We think we have to do ads, and you just need to show up and tell your story. Do you find even though, like, you were kinda saying how women over 40 maybe we're not as technical figuring that out, do you also have it where they're like, "No, I don't wanna be in front of the camera," because that's a lot of photographers that I know that will be like, "No, I don't wanna be in front of the camera. I'm taking the photos of
All
people."
the time, and funny you should say this because one of the photographers that I use personally for my personal photography, she came to me and she was my client first, and
Mm.
she was like, I'm not talking on the camera." Like, she was like, That's crazy." She was like, "That's a crazy thought that you would even have that." And I was like, "Well, it's not." And I was like, "Because people are hiring you." And I said, "It's really important that they get to know you and, like, they know how silly you are and they know how fun you are." And I said, "And that's oftentimes why my pictures are so great with you because you make me laugh, like, so naturally." And I said, "And you need to show up and show that and not just show your work." And, like,
Mhm.
she's like, "I know, but, like, I'm never dressed. My hair's always in a bun." I said, "Who cares? That's
Mhm.
you."
Mhm.
Right? And I said, "I wouldn't tell you to show up with a full face of makeup because you don't show up at my house with a full face of makeup." And I was like, "You just show up as yourself. And, like,
Mhm.
when you show up as yourself, the right people come into your ethos." And it is really the God's honest truth because no one's going to hire you that doesn't like you if they don't like
Mhm.
you online. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that I always tell people, there's two tips that I give people that don't want to go in front of the camera. So number 1, I always tell my clients, you have to share your story, right? Share your story, share your story, share your story. It doesn't mean necessarily showing up with your phone and talking into the video. You can do that, but all you have to do to share your story is share a picture of you in a natural state and in the caption, write the story. Like,
Mm.
write the story. Who are you? What do you do? How do you do it? Why do you do it? And I think the why is the most important part. I will
Mhm.
tell you that that will be one of your most engaged pieces of content because a lot of people who are following you are people who know you, family, friends, etc., and they've never seen you do something like that before.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
it's important to get into the habit of doing it often because that's how you connect with people. The
Mhm.
other thing that I recommend to people is if they want to do video content and they're just really not comfortable with it, is to have someone set up the phone and to interview you. Because it's a
Mm.
lot easier to talk to someone than to feel like you're being so cringy and you have to, like, talk to a video camera, right? But if someone is interviewing you and asking you questions and you're getting sound bites, you can cut that very easily. Many of the apps will cut it for you without you even doing anything now. And so,
Mhm.
I think that's a really great way to get over the fear of showing up on camera is to have someone interview you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great tip because yeah, and I do like a little segment called Car Confessions, and I usually do it after a session because I'm usually on location, and then I do. And you were talking about like I'm not a full head of hair. My hair isn't, or I'm like I am like sweating and and I just show up. I'm after a shoot, and I might just talk about the session, but I do think though, like, it is a little intimidating, so I think having someone just interview you and just have know the questions or whatever so you don't feel.
But don't rehearse them because that's the other thing
Mm,
too, is like, you don't wanna feel contrived, you know
mm,
what I mean? Like,
mhm,
you don't wanna
mhm,
feel rehearsed, you wanna feel natural, people wanna connect with the natural you. I also told a client today she wanted to make a face to camera reel, and I said, "You could use the teleprompter in the Edits app," which is owned by Meta, and I said, "But," I said, I don't want you doing that if you feel like it looks and sounds like you're reading." I said, "Because that's
mhm,
the worst."
mhm,
I said, I'm media trained. I have been on camera hundreds and hundreds of times. I know how to use a teleprompter." And I said, "Most people don't even realize I'm using it when I'm using it." But I said,
mhm,
"If you're gonna use that, you better look like you're not reading
mm,
because people can see through it and they don't want that. They don't want to consume that."
right. And I think in some people might not be on, like, consuming social media, that as a business owner, but if you are, I always just try to say, like, too, for myself, what do I stay on? Like, when I'm watching something, what am I do I watch to the full the end? Or what is like you're saying, like, "Oh, this is fake," or "I don't," whatever, and I just scroll on by. So I feel like maybe even thinking about that too.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Time out, friends. Let's talk about what's in my cup every single morning. Coffee Roaster of Lincoln, Nebraska. Freshly roasted, full of flavor, and honestly, it's the real MVP of my morning routine. They ship anywhere in the US, no matter where you live. Nebraska's best can be in your mug too. Use code TOBTL for 5% off your online order. That's TOBTL. Or just hit that link in the show notes and thank me later. Support small, sip strong, stay caffeinated. There are so many trends on social media. What how do you decide like what's actually worth your time for those?
So I'm not one who chases trends, like, at all,
Okay.
and I don't care about them, and the only time I actually would use a trend is, like, if it really pulls me when I myself to your point, you just made the point, when if I myself am watching something and I'm like, "This is really cool," or "I really like this," or "I really like this song," or, one of the trends that I really like right now is, there's a version of the Silver Springs by Fleetwood Mac, and it's like, like, the other day, I shared a video, and it was like, "Your daughter's gonna ask you in 1st grade." My content was, "Your daughter's gonna ask you in 1st grade if she can go to overnight camp this summer," and then it cut, and I said, "You better sign her up." And it showed, like, the first video was her in 1st grade, and then it was, like, her now in 10th grade with all of her camp friends.
Mm,
And it's like, the song really, like, pulls at your heartstring, and, like, that's been going on for months. I used that, like, months ago when I went to when Michigan won the national champions, I ship, and I went to that, I used that song as well. But to answer your question, I don't chase trends. If I see something I like, I will use it, but I don't believe that creating a trendy piece of content is gonna get you clients or customers, and I also don't believe that going viral is gonna get you customers. It might get you followers, but it's not necessarily gonna grow your bottom line. Just because you go viral, that means nothing, and
mhm,
so, I think it's creating content that speaks to your community, that speaks to you, and that you don't feel cumbersome, like, putting it together. It has to feel inspiring to you, and so sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, and I've always said I'm not gonna ever be the person that, like, points and dances because
mm,
that's not me. Not that we're seeing that so much anymore, which we're not, but when that was a thing, I was like,
mhm,
"That's never gonna be me." And also, like, you're looking at me right now, we're on Zoom, a lot of people are listening, like, I'm wearing my glasses, I'm wearing a sweatshirt, my hair is pulled back today. Um, do I show up at an event, like, on a stage like this? No, I don't, but I do show up like this all the time. This is me, this is how I'm the most comfortable, and this is
mhm,
how I show up online. And so I find that I get the best connection and the most engagement when I show up as myself. And so
mm.
following a trend doesn't necessarily, get that kind of reaction.
Right, right. No, that makes sense where it just be like what we've been saying, like what you've been saying is just be you and show up who you are, and I
I'm
feel
not
like
kidding, like, my best videos are I'll be like, "Oh, like, I have to make like, I have this thought and I wanna, like, share this before it, exits my head." And so because that happens now that I'm over 45. So, so I'll say, "Oh, like, I gotta make a video," but, like, my hair is not even clean, it's not even, like, brushed, and I'm wearing my glasses, or it's at night or whatever, and I'll make a video, and of course, that's the video that goes bananas.
sure.
Course, and everyone sees it, you know what I
Yes,
mean? But, like,
yes.
whatever, it is what it is, and that's me, like, that's how I show up every day.
Mhm.
I literally
Well,
wear a sweatshirt like this every single day.
every day.
Mhm. I have it in 12 colors.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love that you're like, "This is it. This is
It's
where
my
I'm
uniform.
comfortable." Yeah, yeah. And I think, even from, like, 5 years ago to now, that is totally to me has shifted is be who you are, be like, when I watch creators on TikTok, half the time they're like sitting in their bed talking, like you kind of were saying, it might be the end of the night or they're eating or they're in the car or whatever. Like, again, they just maybe something just happened or a thought just like popped in, like you said, and they're just speaking it and not thinking about it, rehearsing, using the teleprompter and yeah, and those are the ones that I'm gonna watch.
And I think now more than ever, that's what people want because with the advent of AI and the fact that really anyone can show up and be whoever they want to be reading from a teleprompter and saying buzzwords but the thing that AI can't do is AI can't make up experience and they can't make up stories. They can't tell your story or story tell about the things that are important to you. And that's why it's so important to just show up as yourself and share more than ever. And I think more than ever, people want that also because, to the point about trends and whatnot, a lot of the content online, and I know we've talked a lot about social media stuff today, but a lot of the content online looks the same and it
Mhm,
sounds the same and it's the same hooks and it's the same everything because people are just kind of like wanting to get followers. And I think that's why I think right now in this moment, what is doing best is the people who are just showing up as themselves and talking and sharing their stories.
mhm, mhm. Talking about women over 40, what do you think? Because I just feel like we're, like, in our prime right now, like, I think, like, kind of thing, and I know we can think like, "Oh, I'm 40, I'm 48," or whatever, how old you are. But do you think that women over 40 have an advantage in business?
Yes. Yes. Now is the time, ladies, really and truly. Especially, I think, if you want to get into something like photography. Like, here's the thing if you are over 40, you have 2 plus decades of experience behind you. So it's not just work experience, like, you likely have some work experience. You might not, and that's okay, but you have life experience, and you have experience maybe managing a household or maybe managing kids.
Mhm,
At the very least, you have experience managing your own life for 2
mhm,
decades, and that is far greater experience than anyone in their 20s. They're just learning it, and they're learning it in a very different way than we did because of all the technology and social media, and so what I'm seeing now is this kind of I'm seeing the tides turning really, and women are in droves wanting to start businesses. They're wanting to come back to work if they've left. They're wanting to get out of corporate America if they're still there. They're wanting to do things that really fill them up and make them feel happy and fulfilled versus just collecting a paycheck. And they're able to do it because they have vast networks. We all have many more contacts than we did at 20. And I'm not just
mhm.
talking about professional networks. Think about who you've been in the pickup line with. Think about who you see at the cafe on your corner. I mean, we all have people we went to college with, people we went to grad school with, people we worked with, and everyone's in different roles now. I mean, it's like you have a vast network. So you have this vast network, you have experience, and whether you believe it or not, you are more confident than you were 20 years ago. And that's the truth. It's the God's honest truth and it's the recipe for success. And so not only are we seeing, it's a fact, it's a statistic that we are seeing more women over 45 start businesses now than ever before. But it's not just starting businesses, it's succeeding in businesses. And they're starting businesses that are creating this life for them that I think a lot of times they didn't even know that they needed or wanted. And they're pleasantly surprised by it. And I really do believe that, like, this is the time.
Mhm, mhm. Well, and I feel like when you were saying, like, they didn't know if they needed or wanted it, and I feel like when you said something about, like, grow when we grew up and stuff, and I just feel like there was that not that we weren't told we could be whatever we wanted to be, but I feel like we always had, like, "This is what you do." You graduate high school, and then you go to college, and you maybe you get married, and I just feel like I never had really I had one great thing I had was my mom was a hair she owned her own hair salon, which yes, that would have been something for her generation, like, if she, having a career, it was maybe more of that, but knowing that she owned her own business and things like that, that I had a little bit of that, but that was never something when I was going to school for I went for theater. I never thought I was gonna be a business owner, and I don't even know if that ever came up in conversation and say, like, my high school career counselor, like, that was never a conversation.
I don't think it does for any of us. I mean, like,
Mm,
I worked in corporate America for 10 years. I was in ad sales, I worked at Hearst, so I worked for Redbook and I worked for Good Housekeeping. I was, like, the youngest executive on my floor when I was hired, like, in Chicago. I loved it. This was a career I loved. I always wanted to work at a magazine. I got to go to the Hearst Tower, like, once a month in New York. It was so freaking cool to be there. I loved, loved, loved it. And I wasn't looking for something else, but I started hosting these events and it kind of, like, took on I mean, I don't half-ass things, so, like, it kind of, like, took off and it snowballed, and when I had my daughter, I had to make this decision, like, what is gonna give? Because I
mm,
cannot, like, be an effective mom and go to work in a job where I have to travel and also own a business on the side, and lucky for me, at the time, I had this female boss who was recently divorced, she was past her childbearing age, she probably was not gonna ever have kids, and she was quite honestly a horrible human to me, and, she told me, like, "I heard you have a side hustle, and if I find out you're doing it on my time, there's gonna be consequences," and that was I was in a position where I exceeded my goal every year at Hearst, like, no one ever had an issue with me doing my job. And that comment alone turned me off so much that I said, "I'm gonna work until I can't work anymore," and I think I lasted, like, 4 weeks after maternity leave, and I left, and I said, "What's the worst that happens? The worst that happens is that this doesn't work, and I come back and get another job." And I
mhm.
never looked back. I wasn't intending to do it, but I also had started something that I was seeing come to fruition, and brands were taking interest in me, and moms by the droves were taking interested in me, and I was like, "This is an actual business," and I didn't wanna give that up, I wanted to try it, and it gave me the opportunity to be around for my daughter, take her to music classes, to be with her at nap time, like, and I loved it, and so, I think I think that, like, oftentimes we're not necessarily looking for these opportunities, but they happen, and we realize when we're in them that they're really I don't know if I can swear here, can I swear
Mhm,
here? But they're really fucking cool,
mhm.
and, like, had it not worked, I would have gone back and gotten a job.
Well, and I think that's the thing you said that, and I was like, "Yes," like, if it didn't work, you would just you knew you could get a job, and, that you took that leap, and that horrible boss being the one to be you were
And
yeah.
don't get me wrong, we had to make a lot of changes in my household, I had a very successful career in advertising. I was making a lot of money for a person of my age, for any age, to be very honest, and so we had to make changes because of that, and I didn't have a nanny 5 days a week when I quit, when I was working, it was not a problem, but when I quit, it was, like, 2.5 days, like,
Sure, sure.
it was just there were a lot of concessions that I had to make for my life when I became an entrepreneur, and it was probably a good 3 to 4 years before I was paying myself again, and I never paid myself what I was making in advertising as an entrepreneur. When I sold my company and I was on payroll again, I was once again getting that paycheck, but, it's very different as an entrepreneur, and so you make concessions and changes and, like but to me, it was worth it,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
to me, I it was absolutely worth it, and that whole experience gave me the experience to do what I'm doing now, and right now is the happiest I've ever been in my career.
Mm, I love that. And I think you saying, like, it was something for you, it worked out for you, and it was what made you happy. So and I think that's the thing, like, to evaluate yourself and where you are in life, and I think too, when we're in our 40s, you kinda start to think about, like, there's not much left. I mean, you can have a lot of life ahead, but you're like, "Oh," like, you're not in your 20s where it's like, "I am" I got all this life, these years ahead of me. Where in our 40s, you maybe think about it more?
I just posted this trial reel the other day, and in the reel, it said, "And if you live into your 80s, that means that you will live another entire lifetime of what you've already lived. So here's what you should do with it." And it was saying, like, do things that make you happy. Make those decisions that fill you up. Surround yourself with people you love. And it was very cliche, of course, but it's a great way to look at it, right? Because I do
Mhm.
think a lot of people hit that 40, 45-year mark and they're like, oh my God, like there's not much left, but that's not true, and, like, you do have a lot of runway left. I was actually thinking about this the other day yesterday, actually. Like, I love what I do so much, I hope I'm still doing it well into my 60s. I really do. I mean, I love working with these women. I love helping them. I love watching their businesses grow. I love interviewing people on my podcast. I mean, I all of it. And so I hope that I'm still doing something like this and I'm still I manage a couple of clients, their personal brands as well. I love that. To me, it's like
Mm,
it is so fun,
mhm.
And so I hope that I'm still doing this in
Sure.
20, 30 years.
Right, right. Well, and I feel like there's something to that too, where if you're like, cannot wait, to hit retirement age or to retire early or anything like that, there is something to think about, well, about that career, unless you're like, because I'm going to travel the world or whatever. But if you're thinking, I hope I'm still doing this in my 60s and 70s or whatever, like there's just something, to me, then there's something about it. I know that I read that you launched, like, the Found Her files on Substack,
Mhm.
and I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about that and, what inspired you to start writing there.
Yeah, so I love to write. So it's so funny because if you were to have asked me in high school, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? I would have said I want to be a journalist and I wanted to work at a magazine. And so it was so ironic that I did end up working at a magazine, not as a journalist, as an ad sales exec. And I learned how to be a marketer. And now here we are, 20 years later, and I would consider myself a journalist. I interview people every single day and I share their stories. That's what a journalist does. I might not be doing investigative news, but I never wanted to do that anyway. And so, in kind of my work through Dear FoundHer and with the women I was mentoring, people ask me things all the time. They ask me questions. They want to know things about the sale of my company. They want to know my frameworks. They want to know my advice. And I love to write. And so I started to share my thoughts as a business owner on the Found Her Files, which is my Substack. And there's a free version and a premium paid version. So like there's something for everyone. And I also wanted to have a place where not everyone wants to listen to a podcast, and that's
Mhm,
okay. Um, I don't do so many solo episodes. I do a few here and there, but I wanted a place where people could read my thoughts and get my advice and get my actionable tips outside of social media.
mm.
And so that's why I started doing it, and I love it. Like I do I share twice a week, and I do think I'm gonna pull back to once a week. I'm trying to figure out what the cadence is gonna be, but I love writing and I love sharing my thoughts there.
Why did you decide Substack, like, over, like, say, a traditional newsletter?
So it's interesting. I had I was sharing a traditional newsletter like to my email list. Like I have an email
Mm,
list in Flowdesk, and I still use that email list for like marketing purposes. And most of those people are also getting my Substack now too. But I also found that, like, it's a lot of work to get people on this list, right?
mhm,
And at Bum Club, for example, I was getting people on our email list because we were hosting hundreds of events all over the country, and when someone would RSVP, we would get their email. So in addition to all the lead magnets and all the things we were running to get emails and all the contests and the giveaways and everything like that, I had these events. This is a very different situation. Substack is a whole ecosystem, and people can find you there like they can find you on Instagram. And so it's a little bit less of a lift to get people on your list in the Substack app versus getting someone to, like, subscribe to, like, a form of yours. Like,
Mhm.
if they see something of mine that they read, if someone shares it and they like it, they can click the button and subscribe right there to get the next one. And I'm finding that it's just a lot easier to, like, share the link of my stories and get people to subscribe than to, like, go through the whole rigmarole of, like, creating a form and, like, getting people in a welcome sequence, which they do get a welcome sequence when they go into my Substack, but it's just different than, like, having your own list. And I do
Mhm.
still have this promotional list, and we do run ads now for certain parts of my business, so that is constantly growing, like, that's but it I didn't run ads until this year, it's been 5 years.
People are gonna find you, and if that's the content, they're gonna keep going back to it, and it's almost to me like an Instagram or anything like that where you're opening it and looking for
Yeah,
it.
and actually, it's very interesting. So I just said we just started running ads, and I've been sharing this because it's been very effective for me. And if I can help one other person be effective using this, I want them to know. So
Mhm.
we were running ads now, like for various things, in Dear FoundHer, and the ads are they're eliciting follows on my Instagram. And I have an automation set up that when someone follows me, they get a note that right away just like talks about how you can get more on the Found Her files. And there's a button and people can click and sign up right there. So we're running ads right now, and these ads are eliciting follows, but they're also eliciting subscribers. And I am not kidding when I tell you I am getting more subscribers coming in from Instagram because of this many chat flow that I have set up, and it's just like 2 messages that they get DM'd than
Mhm.
anywhere else coming to my Substack. I mean,
Interesting.
there are some days that I get 100 new subscribers.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
if we're, like, in a heavy ad campaign, like, right now, I'm running this, I'm doing, like, an open house for my networking group, like, next week, I think it is, so we're, like, running a lot of ads right now for the open house because it's free, and
Sure.
so I'm getting a lot of I'm getting a lot more follows than, like, during a period where we're not promoting anything, and so I'm essentially also getting a lot of subscribers on my Substack, and it's been
Mm.
a one-two punch for me, which has been amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Since most of the people who are listening are photographers, is there something on Substack like, should photographers be on Substack?
Um, should photographers be on Substack? You know, I would say that if you had a blog, I mean, your blog does SEO for you, right? So, like,
Mhm.
that's why you have it on your website. But
Right.
I think if you are blogging about something consistently in your world, it doesn't hurt to put it on Substack too. But I also think that you have to pick and choose. And I
Mm.
think you have to decide where to put your time. And so,
Mhm.
is that worthwhile for you to repurpose there? I can't tell you for sure. You can only try.
Mhm.
But I don't know. My honest answer is I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny, I didn't have that on my questionnaire on my list, but I would as I was listening to you, I was like, "Should we be on there or
I think
or
if you're
not?"
teaching something,
Mm.
I think if, like, you're teaching something or you're teaching people how to run a photography business, I think that's it's a great place to share those kinds of things. But you have to remember it's like long form content for writers.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
essentially what it is. So, like, it's funny because I have a lot of educators or people in the educational space
Mm.
in my ecosystem, and a lot of them are now on Substack, and they should
Mm.
be. Mm.
You're giving listeners a generous gift, 3 months of premium access to the Found Her files. What will they be getting during those 3 months that they don't wanna miss?
So every week I do a Tuesday quick win where I basically that's my free newsletter, but there's always a tangible takeaway, and it's applicable to any business. So it doesn't matter. And like I said, I have plenty of photographers in my ecosystem as well. So, like, it's a great place to get tips and advice for sharing. And then on Thursdays I do a deep dive. So Thursdays is the paywall post that I share, and oftentimes I share frameworks, or I'll share a digital download, or I'll share tips that are not, just out there. They're things that I teach in my mentorship. They're for people who are my paying clients, and this is for my paying subscribers. I do Q&As on those Thursdays too, so, like, once a month, you can submit questions. I do a call to action to submit questions, and I'll answer them. So there's that. Um, and it's just you have access to message me as well. So it's there's so much information in these posts, like, really and truly, like, there is something for everyone that owns a business.
I love it. So we know we can find you there, and I'll put all that information in the show notes. Before we kinda wrap up, where would be another place or places to find you and get a
Dear
see it?
FoundHer on Instagram is the best place to find me, and it's me who responds. Yes, that you get an automated response when you follow, but it is me who looks at the DMs, it's not someone else.
So I
So,
do a little segment that is a rapid fire.
'kay,
So I'm gonna hopefully you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
Coffee or tea,
Coffee.
Instagram or LinkedIn.
Ooh, this is so hard because I tell my clients they have to at least pick 2 for
Oh,
repurposing purposes, and
sure, sure.
my 2 are Instagram and LinkedIn. I
Oh,
would say Instagram edges out LinkedIn a little bit for me,
ok
just
oh,
because I like the entertainment.
sure. Oh, sure. Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
One app you can't live without?
I mean, I would say Instagram. My business is run on Instagram.
Instagram. What's your
That's not very
biggest
exciting, sorry.
No, no, that's fine, that's fine. Biggest business pet peeve?
When people aren't honest. Like, I cannot stand when people are, like, conniving, and I think you can see right through it.
Mhm. And then one word that describes this season of life.
Fulfilled.
Before we wrap up, Lindsay, thank you so much
Thank you
for
so much, Kate, for
doing
having
this.
me and for
Yeah,
being
like I was
open to
just
me coming on.
yeah, this was amazing. And I was just like, as I was like thinking, like, is there anything else that I gotta pick your brain about
Pick away.
before we wrap up? We've already said, that where to connect. I'll put in the show notes, where they can subscribe to the founder files and where to find you. And I guess to tell us, I know you've kind of said that about your podcast. Tell us just a little bit about Dear FoundHer.
Yeah, so I started Dear FoundHer because I wanted to share the stories that I wanted when I became a business owner. When I became a business owner, I didn't have a single friend who was a female founder, and I believe that you should not be building alone. And thankfully, when a decade passed and I exited my company, I had so many women business owners in my network and in my life that many of them are very dear friends of mine now. I wanted to share their stories. And so I started to share their stories, and like I said earlier, I really don't half-ass things, and, I had a bucket list the first season of who I wanted on the podcast, and I filled that bucket list by the end of the
Oh,
first season.
wow.
And yes, and so I've had amazing people on the show. I've had Bobby Brown, I've had Dr. Becky Kennedy, I've had Jen Sherman from Peloton, who's become a very dear friend of mine, and, I actually manage her now, so she's one of my clients, like, so the podcast is really, and I'm sharing this longer story because it has done so much for my life, not just for my business, and I get to share these stories of, like, these amazing women, female founders, and we don't sugarcoat it. We don't
Mm,
talk about rainbows and unicorns. I mean, these are women who have built multi-billion, million-dollar businesses, and, we all go through shit. So,
mhm.
it's nice to hear that they do too.
That's the thing. We don't need the sugar coat. And I think that's kind of what we talked about today of like everybody just wants real on like we were just talking about when we were on Instagram and TikTok. We just want real. We don't
Something I'll say to your photographer audience is, um, I just did a photo shoot, like, I don't know, it was in the winter sometime, so maybe the spring, like, maybe in March. I try to do one, like, every year just to, like, get some new pictures to use,
sure.
and, of course, when I show up to a photo shoot, I'm gonna show up with, hair and makeup, and of course, but I make sure it's very natural, and of course, I'm gonna have, like, an outfit or 2 that's, like, a little fancier, like, right? Like, I had this green satin suit that I wore in a lot of the pictures, and we're using them for a lot of promotional stuff for me.
Mhm.
But I made sure that I also showed up in jeans in one of these sweatshirts. I wore a blue one because cream doesn't photograph so well. And so these sweatshirts are from this brand called Perfect White Tea. They've actually been on my show,
Oh, nice.
and they're amazing, and I wear them every day. And, um, and I said to the photographer, I said, "Tracy, like, is it weird if I wanna show up in a sweatshirt and jeans?" And she said, "That's what you wear every day." And she said, I she goes, "I would almost challenge you and say put on some leggings, but I know you don't wanna wear leggings in your picture." So, so I'm sharing this because I showed up as me, and I'm using these pictures in my marketing, and they're so much more relatable than the ones of me, like, done up. And so encourage your clients to come as they are. I was barefoot in a lot of these. And
Mm,
I think that it's just it makes it so much more relatable, especially if your clients are using their imagery for their brand and their
mm.
own personal brand.
When someone meets you, that's what I always say too. I'm like, when someone meets you in real person, are they gonna know that's you? Well, again, Lindsay, thank you so much for this conversation. This was great. I think this was great for photographers to even think about when they do their brand photos too. And then, like I said, just the showing up and just being you on social media.
Thank you, Kate, for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure.
All right, guys, I know you loved this conversation with Lindsay as much as I did. Her energy and honesty about building a business on her own terms was exactly what I needed to hear, and I bet you did too. If you take one thing away from this episode, let it be this. You don't need a big budget or a huge team to market your business well. You just need to show up as yourself and tell your story. Lindsay talked about a recent photo shoot where she made sure to get pictures of her go to sweatshirt and jeans, not just the polished, done up shots, because those are the ones that actually feel like her. And those are the ones that connect. That's your permission slip, Shutter Squad, to encourage those clients to do the same. You can find Lindsay on Instagram at Dear FoundHer and make sure to check out the Founder Files on Substack. I will have all of that in the show notes. And Lindsay is giving you 3 months of premium access to the Founder Files on Substack, and I will have that link in the show notes as well. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to leave a review or share it with a photographer friend who needs to hear it. It really does help this podcast grow. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, Shutter Squad. I hope you have a great week. Go show up as you and tell your story and create work you're proud of. I will see you next time, right back here on The One Behind the Lens.